So let me first thank you for joining me today. I want to talk about moving beyond fear, and specifically how awakening to your true self, awakening to that transcending presence within you that permeates with love, is a way for us to all come to a freedom from these plethora of negative emotions such as fear, anxiety, worry, jealousy, and all these other different things. And I think this is something that most of us today, as we look at the world, we realize that to a large extent, the world is gripped by a collective fear, a collective sense of uncertainty. We do not know what the future holds. I think in the last number of days, we are possibly getting more hopeful that this will also come to an end. Yet at the same time, we are faced with a situation like we have never seen in my lifetime, and it causes a lot of fear. So what are some of the ways, and how can we actually understand what it takes for us to be free from this fear, to move beyond that fear, to transcend that fear? And ultimately, the only thing that I truly, and there's a lot of techniques and people may share a lot of different things, but based on my experience and the things that I have discovered spiritually, I believe that the only truly way that we experience freedom from fear is by awakening to our true self, awakening to that which is deepest within us. And when I say that, what am I referring to? What is that which is deepest within us? What is our true self? What does that mean, and how does that somehow or another eliminate fear or erase the fear that we're dealing with? And how does that lead to a greater sense of love? You know, we have studied in the Bible that John says that perfect love casts out all fear, not just some fear, but all fear. And so there's got to be something to this perfect love. And when I talk about that love is the very true essence of who you are, and that perfect love is simply means it's complete. It's completed within you to the point where you're now aware of that love as your true identity. Now, I know this sounds strange to so many of you, but I want to just take a few moments and hopefully begin to dissect this or define this or put this into terms that will make sense to you. Now, when you were a child, or I should say when you were a baby, you had no knowledge of who you were. You didn't know your name, your first name, your last name. You didn't know what religion you belonged to. You didn't know if you were religious or if you didn't belong to any religion. You had none of that information. You just were. You were conscious. You were conscious of your existence. You were aware. You had an awareness. You had the ability to observe life and experience reality. You had that ability, but you did not have a accumulation of thoughts or knowledge about yourself. You had none of that. Now, all that came throughout your life. It started at an early age. You became more defined by external input. So it began with your parents, who defined, they gave you a name, they gave you your identity, whether you're a boy or girl. They began to define you, who you are. And then they may have talked about their own experience, their own life, their own beliefs, and they began to teach you the way of how to live, what to do, and and then you begin to learn what they consider as good and what is considered bad. And in a way, your parents, they were perfect. You wanted their love. You wanted their acceptance and approval. You wanted them to like you And so in a way they became like God. And whatever your parents were like, in so many ways, actually is how you perceived God. Later in life, it's how you may even to this day perceive God. It's a reflection of what your parents were like and how your entire life you have sought to please, even if it's just subconsciously, but to please your parents so that they would love you and accept you. So this is all an external input that has been handed to you, but at the very core, if you remove all of that, if you remove every layer that somehow or another surrounded your true self, which is pure consciousness, just a simple awareness that you are, that you, with this simple ability to observe reality and experience life, that has no input, you just exist, you just are, you are aware, and that awareness is deep within you, without all those other definitions, without all those other external inputs as I talked about. It's who you are. And now we see this in, I heard this said a number of years ago by a man named Kenneth Hagin. He said, you have a mind or a soul, you live in a body, and you are a spirit. Now you have to understand the word spirit. Of course, the word means breath. In most ancient traditions, the word was used to speak of the essence, the core essence of life. You are spirit. It was invisible. It could not be seen. And the word actually means wind or breath. And it spoke of something, for example, that you cannot see. The wind or the breath you cannot see, but you can feel it. Another thing that it spoke of is that when you're alive, when you're conscious, it depends on your breath, the fact that you're breathing. When you're breathing, it tells me that we're alive. The moment we stop breathing, we're no longer conscious. That's a simple way of looking at it, right? But that's the essential thought. And you have to understand today we have a much greater understanding of the breath and its oxygen and we have that, but back in those days they didn't know what it meant. They just observed, and what they did observe was that you are breathing, and that means that you're conscious and that you have life. That you had this ability to observe reality and experience life as long as you were breathing. And in the ancient traditions, such as the biblical traditions in Genesis, it says that God breathed into the nostrils of man. It was like, the God took the dust of the earth and he created a form, like a body, like a form. That was how they would describe it. And then God breathed into the nostrils of man his breath, or his spirit, or his consciousness, and man became a living being. Humanity became a living being. In other words, we now were able to observe and experience reality. We were able to see things from we were able to have life. We had awareness. And at the very core essence of who we are, it is this spirit, this consciousness, the fact that we are able to observe reality and experience life. That's the core of who we are. Now, as I said, throughout your life, and then think about this, that's who you are, but then throughout your life, you have now a mind or an intellect that now has defined who you are as something that is based on the thoughts that you have accumulated, based on what other people have told you are. And so in that sense, it has created these layers upon layers that we become so distant from the actual core essence of who we were as babies, just conscious of our life, conscious of that we existed, and because these layers of things that have been created in our life, it has created fear within us. It leads to fear and uncertainty, and it also has led to a need to preserve, to survive, to thrive, to this conceptualized idea of who we are, for it to live forever. We want it to live forever. This idea, this concept we have about ourselves, we want it to be alive. We don't want to be sick. We don't want to be lacking, because the moment we are lacking, we feel that we are less. It creates this fear within us. So in this particular situation we're facing today, there's a fear of getting the coronavirus, and some people may have very little symptoms, but there's some people who have very severe symptoms, and that is an attack on our sense of self. Who we are, who we believe ourselves to be through this accumulation of thoughts that we had over our lifetime. And the same is true when it comes to many things in our lives. We have this accumulation of thoughts of who we are, and that creates fear, and that creates uncertainty. We are afraid about our finances, we're afraid about our death. This conceptualized idea about who we are becomes afraid. And fear is the opposite of love. And fear will keep us in, I don't like to use the word bondage, but it's something that is, I think we understand. It's something that keeps us bound, it keeps us imprisoned, it keeps us trapped in our head. But what happens if we actually awaken to that deepest part within us that is just pure consciousness, where there's no input, we're just aware, we're just present, we just are. We're just being. We breathe in and we breathe out. And what do? We come to recognize that there's something deeper going on here. There's something more profound going on here. And to me, what I've come to realize is that that this is really the truth that sets us free. And I wrote about this in my book, actually, and I thought I could just read something here, see if this will add up to what we're talking about. After I experienced healing from cluster headaches in 2006, this is from chapter 1, where I talk about becoming a seeker of truth, the truth that sets you free, that the only way to know that we have discovered the truth is whether the truth sets us free or not. And otherwise, what are we doing? We're just, I've seen so many people, especially some of my good friends who are pastors and ministers, and they're not free. They talk about freedom and they just throw out nice cliches and nice verbiage, and are very gifted when it comes to speaking and all of that. And it's all great. It sounds wonderful. But if you're not free, what good is it? It doesn't do you any good. I mean, just because I'm saying something forceful enough, and just because I say it with charisma, and just because I say it with humor, and just because I say it and I quote a book and books and Bible. By the way, you can find anything in the Bible to prove whatever point you want. Just because I say it doesn't mean it's true. The only way you know that something can be really true is if it actually sets you free. And if it doesn't set you free, I just don't even go there. Don't even try to defend it. And people say, well, it's just freedom is, people try to do all kinds of things to work around it. because ultimately what they want is for their ideas and their concept to be proven true. It doesn't matter whether it brings freedom or not, as long as it's proven true, which is also about thoughts. It's also about creating a sense of certainty by having the right knowledge, by having the right beliefs, by having the right thoughts. It is still identifying with thought rather than with your true essence of being, which is your spirit, which is pure consciousness, where you are just aware. You're aware of this transcending life. You're aware of your own essence that is in union with something that you cannot explain. You're just aware of it. It's beyond words. It's not something that you can articulate. It's just there. It's a presence. It permeates you. Just aware of this peace, and you're aware of this love, and it just does something within you. It just makes you, it just transforms you somehow or another. And so, but we are still stuck in this thing that we gotta have the right thoughts, the right beliefs, the right knowledge, and somehow or another, that is the truth. But the true definition of truth is it setting you free. If it's setting you free, I would suggest to you that then you found the truth. So here's what I wrote in my book. After I experienced healing from cluster headaches in 2006, I still struggle with emotional baggage rooted in the feeling that I'm not enough. But as I began to meditate on divine love on a more consistent basis, I noticed a significant change in my consciousness. The mental and emotional pain disappeared, and I felt a perpetual peace and freedom unlike any I had experienced before. I began to awaken to reality that I had never dared to consider. Knowing the truth is not really a mental belief system, but an awareness of the spirit within. Our true self is not the body, nor the thoughts of the mind, but the spirit that is one with God. To know the truth is to be aware of the presence within, not as a thought, but as the observer of thoughts. This presence is united with the larger infinite presence, and this union permeates with unconditional and selfless love. Out of this awareness, our sense of self can be transformed. The subconscious narrative of I'm not enough is exchanged with the inner awareness of I am love. Some may ask, is this not a belief? What makes this inner awareness different than any other religious belief system? It's a good question, and I respond like this. A belief is a worldview, idea, or some other mental conception. So yes, it's true as long as it only fills the pages of this book. This truth is a collection of thoughts that form a belief. Yet the experience of awareness, of the awareness of divine presence, is not a mental belief because it circumvents the mind. The distinction may seem immaterial at first, but when a person begins to awaken to the true self, the difference between mental knowing and inner awareness is evident. All of these mental ideas often found in spiritual texts are not themselves the truth. They can point us toward the truth. But the truth that sets us free is not a belief system, but a state of awareness of presence. It's a consciousness that is not grounded in your thinking mind, but in your true self that is one with God. Love is the fabric and the substance of this union. Jesus referred to this freedom as entering the kingdom of heaven. Paul called this salvation. Buddhism and Hinduism call it enlightenment. Other traditions call it transformation. No matter what you call it, something extraordinary happens when you move from fear to freedom. Now, what I'm saying to you is this, that the mind, the knowledge that you accumulated, all the things that you have learned from childhood about who you are, has been deposited into your subconscious and has left a feeling. It has left a feeling that you have about yourself that now guides how you view the world and how you you experience reality, how you observe reality and experience life. It's like a filter. The mind has created a filter by which you observe and experience reality. So the true consciousness, the true awareness of you are so everything that happens, everything that you see, everything that you experience through the filter of your mind that someone else has defined, that has led to feelings of fear, deep-rooted fear, that has led to feelings of shame, feelings that you're not enough, that has led to feelings of anxiety. So everything that you see now you interpret through this mind. But what if you could bypass your mind? What if you could move beyond your mind and just come to a place of awareness? Now, a lot of us have a hard time to actually just come to that place of pure awareness, where we're just aware of this presence within. Especially if we have all kinds of ideas about God that says that somehow or another you are guilty, you need to deserve to be punished, you did no good, all these different ideas that we have been taught, especially a non-dual Christianity, a dualistic Christianity has taught us. This Christianity that is rooted in the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that says that you got to be good, which, by the way, as I said, is just an inner egoic mindset, that you got to be good and avoid evil, and good then is to accept Jesus, and rather than to awaken to something within you. Now, I'm not in any form or fashion saying anything negative about Jesus. Understand this, because I believe Jesus actually shows us the way to awaken within. But the point that I'm making is the ideas that we have received, especially in the last number of years, receiving more so about who Jesus is, what the Bible is all rooted in a construct, in a mental idea about God. And so whatever we experience through that mental construct that has been others have basically defined for us. But what if we awaken within and we begin to perceive the union that we have with God that is spirit, that is consciousness, with God that is love, the God that is light, God that is one, and we begin to experience that oneness and union? How does that transform the way we perceive the world? How does it transform how we experience life? So what I'm saying to you is this: there is a way to see Jesus that is not based on the mental construct that we have, but is based on a rebirth or moving back. The word repentance, for example, in the Bible has been used as a dirty word basically today, repent. But repent means to change your mind or to return back to the original point, and to return back to that which is originally you, your true essence, consciousness, where you have not received these external inputs, but you're just aware. You just have the ability to observe life and experience reality. You're just aware. You're just a sponge, and you're just seeing everything, and you're not living in the past, because you have no past. You have no concept of the past. You're just aware, and everything you experience, you take in. But what if you can take that in with that awareness of that there is a divine union here, and that your unity is with all things. It's when you're being transformed by this, when you're being transformed in this way, it's gonna give you what Paul talks about, the mind of Christ. You see things differently, and you begin to be more loving. Why? Because it's just who you are. You begin to identify with your neighbors, with your friends. And this brings you tremendous freedom. Now, there are many things I could talk about here, but what I'm saying to you is this is the way to come to a place of freedom from fear. Now, and maybe the whole story of Jesus is this, that Jesus died, and then he rose again from the dead. Now, we know that, okay, but what if this is what it means? As it says in Paul said, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I that live. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. It's interesting when you read this. There are two words that are used here for I. One of them is being, and the other one is ego. The ego is this conceptualized idea about yourself, the knowledge that you have about yourself, your mind, all the things you've learned and accumulated that have said, this is who you are. That's the ego. He says, that has died. And he says, Paul says, I have died with Christ. I died. My ego died. Yet I live, but not I. What is this I that live? It's being. I have a being. And that being is that pure awareness, this spirit that I am, this consciousness that I am, that is one with God, that is one with all things, that is one with your neighbors, with the world, with the globe, with everything. Once you awaken to that, once you begin to see that, how does that transform your world? And see, here's what happens. The more you begin to experience that, the more you're free from fear. Because you're, as I said, fear is rooted in the concept you have about yourself. It's rooted in these ideas and mental construct in your ego. That's where it comes from. But the more you begin to awaken to that, you're free from fear. You realize your life is not those thoughts. Your life is not your body. Your life is this presence within you that permeates with love. So meditation then is a way for you to quiet your heart and become aware within you of this incredible presence. Now, people like me who came from the Christian background, I do that to understand through Jesus. I focus on Jesus and His grace, the peace of the Holy Spirit. And I feel it inside of me. I feel this grace, the death of my ego, the mind. I picture it, imagine it as I meditate. And then I come to this place of meditating on love. And love is the essence of God. Love is my true essence. As Jesus said, I'm one with the Father. I'm one with you, which makes me one with the Father. I'm one with that. And when you become aware of that, the fear dissipates. You're free. And that's what it means to know the truth. I'll challenge you to think about this some more and begin to do this meditation every day. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.